It was a day like any other, but nothing could have prepared Emma for what she would hear. She had just returned home from a long day at work, the usual hum of the city outside, when her phone buzzed. The name on the screen sent a jolt of dread through her body. Jack. He hadn't called in months. His voice when it came was shaky, almost unrecognizable. "Emma, I need you to sit down." That's when it hit her. Something was wrong. The truth when it came was unbearable. Her heart dropped to the pit of her stomach as Jack revealed the secret he had kept hidden for years. Their son wasn't really hers. The words echoed in her mind over and over, like a cruel joke that refused to be undone. Her world began to crumble piece by piece. She couldn't breathe. How could this be true? What did it mean for everything she had known? The truth had shattered her, and now she was left to pick up the broken pieces of a life she thought she understood. The betrayal, the shock, she couldn't process it all. Was it too late to fix anything? After the call ended, Emma remained frozen, her heart pounding in her chest. The room seemed smaller, the air heavier. She couldn't move, couldn't breathe. The world outside her window carried on, unaware of the devastation inside. Emma forced herself to stand, her legs shaking beneath her. As she moved through the apartment, everything felt foreign. Her own home, her own life. Every corner seemed to echo with the absence of truth. How could this have happened? How could Jack do this to us? She sat at the kitchen table, hands clenched, her mind racing. She thought of their son, the boy they had raised, the child she had loved as her own. But now, the foundation of it all was cracked. Who was he really? And who was she, now that everything she had known was a lie? Emma buried her face in her hands. She couldn't handle this. The weight of betrayal was unbearable. But something deep inside her told her she had to face it, to understand the truth, even if it meant destroying everything she thought she knew. It wasn't long before Emma's thoughts started to turn toward Jack. Her anger, once raw and unfocused, slowly began to take shape. She had trusted him with everything. Their son, her son, was everything. Now it felt like a cruel joke. The silence of the apartment was suffocating, and Emma couldn't escape the feeling that her life had been shattered in an instant. She needed answers. She had to confront Jack. But what would she say? She couldn't even begin to process the words. The rage bubbling inside her only deepened her confusion. She wanted to scream, to demand the truth. But the reality was that the truth had already been revealed. There was no going back. Emma stood and walked toward the phone, her heart still pounding. She stared at it, unsure of whether to call him or simply let the silence swallow her. She was torn between the need for confrontation and the fear of what Jack might say next. Finally, she picked up the phone. The phone rang twice before Jack's voice answered. "Annie." "Emma," he said, his voice softer than before, as if he could sense her anger. "I know you're upset, but..." "Upset?" Emma interrupted, her voice shaking with emotion. "You think this is just upset? You lied to me, Jack. You lied to us. How could you keep something like that from me? How could you do that to our son?" There was a long pause on the other end of the line. "I didn't know how to tell you," Jack finally whispered, his voice breaking. "I thought..." Emma's voice cracked, filled with both rage and sorrow. You thought you could just keep this from me? Our son isn't even mine. How could you think that would be okay?" Jack remained silent, and Emma's mind spun faster, her emotions a blur. She wanted to yell, to scream, but she was too tired. Tired of the lies, tired of the hurt. As the conversation ended, Emma felt the weight of the world on her shoulders. Jack had apologized, too many times. But it didn't change the fact that the one thing she held dear was now a broken promise. She sat down on the couch, her body exhausted from the emotional toll. She couldn't bring herself to process the truth anymore. Not tonight. What? She was too tired. She closed her eyes and tried to imagine a future where she could find peace again, but it felt impossible. How could she move forward from something like this? How could she trust anyone, let alone the person she had built a life with? Her eyes opened to the dim glow of the city lights outside, distant and cold. Everything felt so far away. Emma sank deeper into the cushions, allowing the tears she had been holding back to finally fall. She couldn't stop them. Maybe it was the only way to begin healing. Emma sat across from the mentor, an older woman with sharp, wise eyes, whose quiet presence seemed to pull Emma from her thoughts. She had known the mentor for years, but today felt different. There was a heaviness in the air. "You have to face it, Emma," the mentor said, her voice calm but firm. "The truth isn't just about what Jack did. It's about what you'll do with it now." Emma clenched her fists, her nails digging into her palms. The pain of it all was so fresh, like a wound that had only just begun to heal, only to be torn open again. "I don't know how to move forward," Emma whispered. "I don't know who I am without the lie." The mentor studied her for a moment, her expression softening. "You're not defined by your past, Emma. You can be something different. It's not too late." The words hung in the air, offering a flicker of hope, but it felt so far out of reach. Emma nodded slowly, but deep inside, doubt still lingered. Could she truly leave the past behind and rebuild herself? After the conversation with the mentor, Emma sat in silence for what felt like hours. The words echoed in her mind. "You're not defined by your past." It was easier said than done. The truth had shaken her to the core, and she couldn't escape the feeling of betrayal that still clung to her. She spent the next few days in a haze, unable to focus on anything, lost in the thoughts of what she'd learned about Jack and their family. One evening, she decided to take a walk, hoping the cool air would clear her mind. The city's lights blurred as she walked through the quiet streets, her footsteps muffled by the soft rhythm of her thoughts. The streets were empty, but in the silence, Emma finally allowed herself to grieve. Grieve for the life she thought she had, and for the person she thought she was. She hadn't been able to do that before, not with the constant weight of the revelation hanging over her. Now, with each step, it felt like she was starting to release the tension in her body, the first signs of letting go. Days passed, and Emma's grief slowly shifted into something else, confusion. She couldn't escape the pull of the unanswered questions, the unspoken parts of Jack's story that he hadn't shared. It ate at her, gnawing at her like an unhealed wound. She had to know more. After gathering the strength, she called Jack again. The phone rang twice before he picked up. "Emma," Jack said, his voice filled with regret. "I didn't want to hurt you." "But you did," Emma interrupted, her voice sharp, betraying the anger she'd tried to keep under control. "You kept a secret from me for years. Why? Why didn't you tell me?" There was a long pause before Jack responded, his voice almost a whisper. "I thought I could protect you. I thought I could keep everything together." Emma's chest tightened. "Protect her? How is lying to me protecting anyone?" she snapped, unable to hold back the pain anymore. The silence on the other end was deafening. Emma knew Jack was hurting too, but his pain couldn't undo the damage he had done. Emma's emotions were like a storm, each day bringing a new wave of anger, confusion, and sorrow. As she walked through the streets one afternoon, she came across a small park. It was quiet, the kind of place where people would come to reflect or take a break from their busy lives. She sat on a bench, the cool air brushing her cheeks, and closed her eyes for a moment. There was something calming about the quiet of the park. But even in the silence, Emma's mind raced. What was she supposed to do now? The mentor's words returned to her. "You're not defined by your past." Could she really find a way to move forward? Or would she always be trapped in the past, unable to break free from the lies that had shaped her life? The weight of it all pressed down on her chest. Just as she thought she might collapse under the strain, she heard footsteps approaching. She opened her eyes to see the confidant, her best friend, standing nearby. Without saying a word, the confidant sat beside her, offering silent support. Emma didn't need to speak, she just needed someone to be there. The days that followed were a blur, but slowly, Emma began to accept that her life would never be the same. She had to find a new path, a new version of herself, one that wasn't chained to the secrets of the past. The grief hadn't disappeared, but she was starting to see a glimmer of hope. As she walked through the city, The streets seemed brighter, the world a little less heavy. The weight in her chest wasn't gone, but it was lighter. She met with the mentor again, who smiled gently at her progress. "You've taken the first step, Emma," she said softly. "You're beginning to heal." Emma nodded, a small but meaningful smile tugging at the corners of her mouth. There was still much to do, much to rebuild, but for the first time in weeks, Emma felt like she could take the next step. Maybe she couldn't change everything, but she could change how she saw herself. And that was a start. Emma sat at the small cafe by the window, her hands wrapped around a warm cup of coffee. The weather outside was cloudy, the sky a soft gray. Her thoughts were far from the calming hum of the cafe, drifting instead to Jack's words. After their last conversation, Emma couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't adding up. Protect her? How could he think lying would protect her? She ran the conversation over and over in her mind, each time feeling more betrayed. Yet, as she stared into her coffee, she realized there was something more she needed to understand. She hadn't gotten the full story from Jack, and now she had to dig deeper. Was there more to this secret? Her phone buzzed, pulling her out of her thoughts. The message on the screen wasn't from Jack, but from the secondary character, her colleague at work. "I need to talk to you about something important. Meet me?" Emma's heart raced. Was this the conversation that would unlock the final piece of the puzzle? She wasn't sure, but she had to know. Standing up, she grabbed her things and left the cafe, stepping out into the cloudy streets with a new sense of urgency. Emma walked briskly through the streets, her thoughts clouded and frantic. The secondary character's message had thrown her off. Who was she to trust anymore? As she approached the meeting spot, a small park near the office, Emma tried to steady her nerves. The leaves rustled in the breeze, and the light filtering through the trees was muted. She spotted her colleague sitting on a bench, a man in his late 30s, wearing a professional yet casual outfit. As he noticed her approach, he gave a small wave. "I'm glad you could make it," he said, his voice quiet. Emma sat down beside him, her eyes narrowing in suspicion. "What is this about?" she asked, her voice steady but with an edge. He hesitated before speaking. "I know about Jack's secret," he began, lowering his voice as if someone might overhear. "But there's something else. Something he didn't tell you." Emma felt a chill run down her spine. Was this the truth she had been waiting for? The secondary character's next words could be the key to unraveling everything. But part of her was afraid of what would happen once she had all the answers. "You don't understand," the secondary character continued, his voice lower now. "There's more to Jack's story than just what you know. I think he was trying to protect you, but he was also hiding something about himself." Emma's pulse quickened. Her mind raced with questions, none of them good. "What are you talking about?" she demanded, her frustration creeping into her voice. "I can't give you all the details right now, but I think you should know," he said, hesitating. "Jack is hiding something from you that involves his past. There are pieces of his life that you haven't seen, things that could change everything for you." Emma's head spun, her gut twisted. If Jack had been hiding his past all this time, how much of their life together had been a lie? Was she just a part of his cover-up? "Why are you telling me this?" she asked, her voice hoarse. The secondary character looked at her with pity in his eyes. "Because you deserve the truth, Emma, and I think you're ready to hear it." As the secondary character's words echoed in her mind, Emma walked back home, the weight of the conversation settling heavily on her shoulders. She couldn't escape the feeling that everything had been manipulated, that Jack had orchestrated this entire life to hide his past from her. But why? Why was it so important to keep these secrets? She couldn't shake the nagging question, was she really that naive? Once she was home, Emma paced the living room, her hands running through her hair as she tried to make sense of everything. The room felt smaller now, like a cage that was closing in on her. She reached for her phone, ready to confront Jack again. The rage in her had been building, and now, with these new revelations, she couldn't hold it back. She needed answers, and this time she wouldn't settle for half-truths. As the phone rang, she felt the gravity of the moment settle in. This was it. No more lies. No more secrets. When Jack finally picked up the phone, his voice sounded distant, almost as if he had been expecting this moment. "Emma, we need to talk," he said, but there was an edge to his tone, one that Emma hadn't heard before. "I know you're angry," he continued, "and I deserve that. But there's more." Emma didn't wait for him to finish. "You lied to me, Jack. You've been lying to me for years, and I've been living in this false reality, thinking I knew you, thinking we had something real. But you were hiding your past from me." Her voice was sharp, filled with the pain of betrayal. There was silence on the other end, and when Jack finally spoke, his words were heavy. "I didn't want you to know because I thought I was protecting you, but now I see that I've hurt you more than I ever could have imagined." The tears began to well up in Emma's eyes, but she refused to let them fall. She couldn't let him see her break. "I need to know everything, Jack," she said, her voice shaking with the force of her demand. "No more secrets." Emma sat in the small cafe across from the love interest, a man in his early 30s with dark hair and a kind expression. There was a moment of silence between them, neither knowing where to start. He had been patient with her, letting her take her time, but Emma knew things had shifted between them. She had felt a pull toward him, but the weight of everything still hung over her. "I'm not sure I can do this," Emma said softly, her fingers tracing the rim of her coffee cup. "I've been hurt so much, and I don't know how to let anyone in again." The love interest leaned forward, his voice gentle but firm. "You don't have to do it alone, Emma. I'm not asking you to forget everything or let go all at once. But you don't have to carry it all by yourself." She looked at him, seeing something in his eyes that made her heart beat a little faster. She had always feared love, feared getting hurt again, but maybe, just maybe, there was a chance for something real. Over the next few weeks, Emma found herself spending more time with the love interest. Their connection was undeniable, but it came with its own set of challenges. Emma couldn't ignore the walls she had built around her heart, and every time the love interest reached out, she hesitated. One evening, they were walking along the riverfront, the city lights sparkling on the water. "I know you're afraid," he said, his voice soft, "but you don't have to be. I'm not going anywhere." Emma stopped, turning to face him. "How do you know that?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "How can you be sure?" He smiled gently, his hand brushing against hers. "Because I'm here, and I'll keep showing up, no matter what." Emma's heart fluttered in her chest, a mix of fear and hope filling her all at once. Could she allow herself to trust again? The question lingered as they stood there, the night quiet around them. It wasn't long before Emma began to open up, just a little. In the quiet moments, when the love interest wasn't pushing, she could feel the barriers breaking down. One evening, they were sitting on the couch in her apartment, the soft hum of the city outside. Emma took a deep breath, her voice trembling as she spoke. "I've been afraid of getting hurt again. I've been afraid of feeling too much and then losing it all." The love interest nodded, his hand gently brushing against hers. "I know," he said softly. "I've seen it in the way you pull back, the way you hesitate. But that's okay. I'm not asking for perfection, Emma, just honesty." Emma swallowed hard, the weight of his words settling in her chest. She had been holding back for so long, keeping her emotions locked away. But now, in this quiet moment, she felt a spark of something different. Maybe it wasn't too late to heal. Maybe she could allow herself to feel again. As the weeks passed, Emma felt herself becoming more attuned to the possibility of love again. But just as she began to feel hopeful, the past returned in a way she hadn't expected. One evening, Jack showed up at her door. His face was drawn, his eyes tired. "We need to talk," he said, his voice strained. Emma didn't want to hear it, didn't want to open the door to the past. But there was something in Jack's voice, something she couldn't ignore. She stepped aside, letting him in. They sat down, the silence thick between them. "I never meant to hurt you," Jack began, his voice breaking. "I thought I was doing the right thing by keeping my past a secret. But now I see how much I've damaged you, and I'm so sorry." Emma looked at him, the emotions she had kept locked away beginning to surface. Was this apology enough? Was it too late for them to fix what had been broken? After Jack left, Emma sat in the quiet of her apartment, her mind spinning. His apology had stirred something in her, a mix of anger and relief. She didn't know what to do with it, how to process the emotions that were flooding her. The love interest had been a steady presence throughout, but now Emma was facing a new crossroads. Could she truly forgive Jack? Could she ever truly let go of the past and build a new future with someone else? She stood by the window, staring out at the city lights, lost in thought. The love interest walked up behind her, placing a hand gently on her shoulder. "You don't have to figure it all out right now," he said softly. "Take it one step at a time." Emma nodded, taking a deep breath. The journey to healing wasn't easy, and it certainly wasn't quick. But in that moment, she realized that she didn't have to do it alone. It had been days since the conversation with Jack, and Emma found herself standing at a crossroads. She had tried to push forward to heal, but something still lingered in the back of her mind. The truth Jack had shared was undeniable, yet it felt incomplete. Why did he wait so long to tell her? Was there more he wasn't saying? Emma found herself drawn back to the place where everything had started, their home. She walked through the front door, the same door she had shut behind her when everything fell apart. The silence was deafening, and for the first time, she allowed herself to feel the weight of the loss. But this time, it wasn't just about the secrets. It was about everything that had been left unsaid. She had been afraid to confront the truth, but now, standing in the center of their life together, she couldn't hide anymore. "I need answers," Emma whispered to herself, her voice shaking. Her heart pounded as she reached for her phone, preparing to call Jack again. But this time, she was determined to hear everything, no more half-truths. As Emma dialed Jack's number, her mind raced. The phone rang twice before Jack's familiar voice came through the line. "Emma, I know you're upset." "Upset?" she interrupted, her voice sharp. "You think that's all this is? You think I'm just upset about what you did?" Her pulse quickened as the anger she had kept at bay finally spilled over. "You've broken everything, Jack. You lied to me, and now you expect me to just move on." Jack's voice faltered. "I never wanted to hurt you, Emma. I thought I was protecting you." Emma's grip on the phone tightened. "You can't protect me by lying to me. You can't fix this with excuses, Jack." There was a long pause, and Emma could hear the soft crackle of his breathing through the phone. Finally, Jack spoke, his voice softer this time. "I'm sorry, Emma. I never meant for it to go this far. But I'm ready to tell you everything now, all of it. No more secrets." Emma's heart clenched, unsure whether she could handle the truth, or if she even wanted to hear it. But one thing was certain, she needed to know. Jack's voice finally began to unfold the truth, each word heavier than the last. He told her about the secret he had buried for years, the truth about their son's origins, the reason he kept it from her. As Emma listened, her emotions shifted between disbelief, anger, and confusion. The man she had loved, the father of her child, had kept her in the dark. And for what? To protect her? It made no sense. "I thought I could fix everything by keeping it a secret," Jack explained, his voice barely above a whisper. "But I see now that I was wrong." Emma's throat tightened as she absorbed his words, the weight of the betrayal pressing down on her. She had always trusted him. She had given him everything. And now, everything she had known seemed to crumble around her. The rage she had felt earlier began to fade into something darker, something that felt like loss. She wanted to scream, but instead, she sat in silence, trying to digest the enormity of what Jack had just revealed. After the call, Emma sat motionless for what felt like hours. The weight of Jack's confession hung heavy in the air, and the apartment, once filled with warmth, now felt cold and foreign. She couldn't decide if the truth was a relief or a curse. The pieces of their life that she had once held so dear were now fragmented, shattered by a secret that had been kept too long. She stood up slowly, her legs unsteady, as if the world itself had shifted beneath her feet. She moved toward the window, staring out at the city below, the night stretching out before her like an endless void. What was she supposed to do now? Could she ever look at Jack the same way again? Could she rebuild the life she had with him? The answers weren't clear, but as she stood there, Emma realized something. She had to make a choice. She could either let the past define her, or take control of her future. She wasn't sure which path she would take yet, but one thing was certain: she couldn't keep living in the shadows of the past. The days that followed were a blur, each one filled with contemplation and pain. Emma had taken time away from Jack, needing space to think. But even in the quiet of her apartment, the memories of their life together haunted her. She wasn't sure if she could forgive him. Not yet, at least. But something inside her had shifted. She couldn't stay angry forever. The phone rang again one evening, and despite everything, Emma found herself reaching for it. It was Jack. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice low but sincere. "I don't expect you to forgive me, but I will do whatever it takes to make it right." Emma's breath caught in her throat, the weight of his words sinking in. Could she open her heart again? Was forgiveness even possible? The pain was still there, raw and fresh, but there was something else too: hope. Hope that maybe, just maybe, they could rebuild what had been broken. Emma stood by the window again, watching the city unfold beneath her. She had spent so many nights just like this, trapped in her thoughts, unsure of what was coming next. But today was different. The phone call with Jack had brought clarity. He had asked for forgiveness, but that wasn't what she needed. What Emma needed was to find herself again. She wasn't just the woman who had been hurt. She wasn't just a victim of betrayal. She was someone with strength, someone capable of reclaiming her life. She knew now that forgiveness didn't mean forgetting, but it meant releasing herself from the past. Taking a step forward wasn't about Jack or their broken relationship. It was about Emma and the future she wanted. She turned away from the window and looked at the empty apartment, no longer filled with the weight of secrets. Today was the beginning of her new journey. The next day, Emma met with her mentor again. She had come to realize that the path to healing wasn't a straight line. There were still days of uncertainty, of self-doubt, but the clarity she had gained was undeniable. "I've been holding on to the past for so long," Emma said, her voice calm but firm. "And I think I finally understand that it's okay to let go." Her mentor smiled, her eyes kind. "It's a difficult thing to do, Emma, but you're stronger than you know." The words resonated with Emma like a reminder that the pain she had felt was not permanent, and it did not define her. She didn't need to carry the weight of the past anymore. With each step, she felt lighter, ready to embrace the unknown with courage instead of fear. As days turned into weeks, Emma began to reconnect with the world around her. She took walks in the park, met with friends, and allowed herself to feel joy again. One afternoon, while walking through the park, she bumped into the love interest. They had spent time together before, but their relationship had always been uncertain, tinged with the scars of Emma's past. This time, there was something different. "I'm glad we ran into each other," the love interest said, his voice warm. Emma smiled, a soft, genuine smile that reached her eyes. "Me too," she replied. For the first time in a long time, she felt open to the possibility of love. There was no rush, no pressure. Just a quiet understanding that healing takes time, but that didn't mean she couldn't enjoy the moment. "I'm ready to give this a real chance," Emma said softly, looking at him with newfound confidence. Emma's journey wasn't just about moving on from Jack, it was about rediscovering herself. It had been months since that pivotal conversation, and she had been taking small steps toward healing. But it was time to face the past, not to relive the pain, but to truly understand it. One evening, Jack reached out to her again, this time without the weight of secrets. He asked if they could meet and talk, this time without the distance, without the emotional baggage. Emma hesitated but agreed. Sitting across from Jack at a quiet cafe, she felt the tension between them, but also a strange sense of closure. "I'm not asking for us to go back," Jack began, his voice softer than before. "I just wanted you to know that I'm truly sorry for the way I handled everything." Emma nodded, her eyes steady. "I've forgiven you, Jack," she said. "Not for you, but for me. I needed to let go of the anger." They sat in silence, the weight between them lighter than it had ever been. For the first time, Emma felt free. Weeks passed, and Emma's life continued to unfold in unexpected ways. She wasn't the same person she had been before all the pain, but she wasn't defined by it either. She had learned to live with the scars, to understand that they didn't need to dictate her future. One afternoon, as Emma walked through the same park where she had first reconnected with the love interest, she paused to take in the moment. Everything around her seemed so alive, so full of possibility. She had found a sense of peace within herself, not because everything was perfect, but because she had accepted that imperfection was part of life. The love interest joined her again, this time not just as someone she was learning to trust, but as someone who had walked beside her through the most difficult parts of her journey. "Are you happy?" he asked, his voice soft. Emma smiled, a genuine smile, and for the first time in a long time, she didn't feel like she was pretending. "Yes," she said, her voice steady. "I'm happy." The sun had set, casting a warm amber glow over the horizon. Emma stood at the edge of the park, the breeze softly tousling her hair as she looked out at the city. The journey had been long, filled with pain and doubt, but she had found peace. It wasn't the absence of pain, but her strength to move forward. The love interest walked beside her, asking, "Are you ready to move forward?" She turned to him with a soft smile, her voice steady. "I already have." The past no longer defined her. This was the beginning of her new life, full of hope and possibility. A week later, Emma stood in front of the door to her old apartment. She had spent so many years here, but now it felt like a distant chapter of her life. She had packed up her things, ready to start fresh. Her new place was just a few blocks away, a symbol of her growth, a space where she could truly begin anew. As she stepped inside one last time, the memories flooded her, good and bad, but they didn't feel as heavy anymore. She wasn't running from them, she was acknowledging them, allowing them to be part of her story without letting them define her. Closing the door behind her for the final time, she smiled softly to herself. This was the moment she had been waiting for. She was moving on, not just from her apartment, but from the weight of her past. The world outside felt full of possibility, and Emma was ready to take the next step. She was no longer bound by her past. She had freed herself. As the days went on, Emma found herself feeling more grounded than ever before. She had built a routine, embraced the peace within herself, and rediscovered the joy of small moments. One evening, the love interest invited her to dinner at a small, cozy restaurant, a place they had both discovered during one of their walks. As they sat at the table, the soft clink of silverware and quiet conversation filled the air, but Emma felt a deep sense of connection with him. She wasn't just here to be with someone. She was here because she wanted to be. "I never realized how much I needed this," Emma said, looking across the table at him. "Not just the relationship, but the space to be myself, to be happy, even without all the answers." The love interest smiled, his eyes soft. "You've always had that power within you, Emma. I'm just glad I get to be a part of your journey now." Emma's heart swelled as she realized that love wasn't about finding someone to complete her. It was about sharing the joy and the struggles, together. One day, Emma found herself sitting in the same park where she had first opened up to the love interest. The seasons had changed, and the park was now filled with vibrant autumn colors. She sat on the same bench, her eyes closed, breathing in the crisp air. She had come here to reflect, to take in the beauty of the world around her. But now, the park felt like a place of renewal. It was where she had taken the first steps toward healing, and now it was where she could appreciate how far she had come. She had rebuilt her life, piece by piece, and with each passing day, the weight of the past lifted. The pain no longer held her back. She was ready to face whatever came next, not with fear, but with a sense of confidence. Her life was hers to shape, and Emma had the power to define her future, free from the shadows of the past. As Emma walked along the riverbank, the cool air refreshing her, she reflected on everything she had overcome. She had healed, rediscovered herself, and opened her heart. The love interest walked beside her, his presence steady. It was moments like this that spoke to her heart. She no longer feared the future. Her journey was about growth, love, and the strength to move forward. "Are you happy?" he asked. Emma stopped, facing him with a radiant smile. "Yes," she said. "I'm happy. And I'm ready for whatever comes next."